The sea does not ask for permission. It simply arrives, wave after wave, patient as an old song, relentless as memory. The shore learns to expect it. The shore has no choice. Salt hangs in the air. A sailor 300 miles from land tastes it on his tongue and knows the god is near. Not because he sees him, not because he hears him, but because the water changes, the way it moves, the way it holds light. Something shifts beneath the surface, and every sailor learns to read those shifts the way a farmer reads wind. The Mediterranean stretches out like a blade of bronze, glittering under a sun that has watched this same water for 10,000 years. Fishing boats bob on the swell. Gulls cry out their ancient warnings. And somewhere, far below where light can reach, something vast and old stirs in the darkness. This is his domain. Not rented, not borrowed, owned in the way only gods can own things, completely, irrevocably, with a patience that makes mountains seem impatient. He does not need a throne. He is the throne. He does not need a palace. The entire ocean is his palace. And yet, Poseidon walks his halls the way a king walks empty corridors at midnight. The water parts for him. The creatures of the deep scatter and return, drawn to his presence the way moonlight is drawn to the tide. They do not know him, not really. They know only the force he represents, the pull, the power, the immensity. He has children scattered across the world, sons and daughters born of unions with mortals, nymphs, creatures that have no name in human language. He gives them gifts, the gift of horses, swift and wild, the gift of cities, built on land he permits them to claim, the gift of his blessing, which sounds very much like his curse. They come to him with offerings, gold and amber, the blood of bulls, the prayers that rise like steam from salt-stained altars. They come with their needs and their fears and their desperate bargaining, and he receives them, because that is what gods do. But when they leave, and they always leave, the silence returns. The particular silence of a god who has been worshipped for millennia and has never once been asked, "Are you lonely?" He does not know how to answer such a question. He is not certain the question exists in his vocabulary. There is only the water, the endless, surrounding, perfect water.
But here is the truth that no hymn records, no temple wall depicts. The sea is not empty. The sea is full of sound and motion, of life in every color and form, of currents that cross oceans like veins crossing a body. The sea is the most alive place on earth, and Poseidon floats in its heart, surrounded by all that life, and feels something he cannot name. It is not sadness. Sadness requires a memory of something better. It is not anger. Anger requires someone to blame. It is more like a pressure, a weight without source, an emptiness that is not empty, but rather full of something that has no outlet. The waves break against the shore. They have broken against this shore since before humans walked upright. They will break against it long after the last temple falls. And each wave is a breath, each tide is a heartbeat. The whole world watches the sea and sees power, beauty, terror. No one watches long enough to see what comes after the spectacle fades. No one stays for the quiet. The particular suffocating quiet of being the most powerful thing in the room, and realizing somewhere in the deep architecture of your being that power is not the same as presence, that being feared is not the same as being held. The surface never breaks. That is the first thing you must understand about Poseidon. The second thing you must understand is this: the surface never breaks because something beneath it learned long ago that breaking would change nothing. What does a god do when he has everything under control except the one thing he needs most?
There is a moment. Perhaps it happens once in a great while. Perhaps it happens every time a wave touches shore, when Poseidon remembers. Not the wars, not the battles with his brothers, the division of the world like meat carved from a carcass, not the feuds with Athena over patronage of cities, the petty grudges that immortal beings nurse like embers. He remembers a time before the trident, before the epithets, before he was Earthshaker and Lord of the Sea and the Dark-Haired One, names that sound like titles but are really just walls. He remembers being something else, something simpler. But the memory does not stay. It never stays. It surfaces like a dolphin, a glimpse, a arc, a flash of something that might have been joy, and then it is gone and the water closes over it, and there is only the endless blue again. This is what it means to be a god, not to forget, but to be unable to hold on to what you remember. The gods are cursed with perfect memory and zero ability to change what they remember. They carry every moment, every slight, every kindness, all of it equally weighted, all of it equally distant. They cannot heal because they cannot forget. They cannot grow because growth requires releasing, and gods do not know how to release. Poseidon has a wife, Amphitrite, daughter of Nereus, the old man of the sea. She is beautiful in the way that deep water is beautiful, cold, remote, luminous in ways that suggest depth rather than reveal it. She came to him not from love, but from courtship that looked like conquest. He pursued, she fled. He pursued more, she surrendered. This is the story the myths tell. They tell it as romance. They tell it as triumph. What does it mean to love someone who ran from you? What does it mean to build a life with someone who learned very early that running was not an option?
There is a name for what happened to him that morning. The morning when he woke and realized he could not remember the last time someone touched him without fear. But names are not the point. The point is the feeling, the specific, grinding exhaustion of being necessary to everyone and known by no one. We call it defensive isolation. It is what happens when you build walls so high, so thick, so impregnable that they keep out not just the threats you built them against, but the warmth you cannot admit you need. It is the professional who answers emails at midnight because the silence at home is too loud. It is the parent who provides everything except presence. It is the friend who is always there for you and never there for themselves. The sea does this. The sea keeps everything out. Shipwrecked sailors, drowned men, secrets spilled into deep water. The sea is a fortress, and Poseidon is its king, alone in his fortress, surrounded by enemies he created by being too powerful to approach. His children come to him with offerings. They do not come to him with questions. If they asked, "Father, are you happy? Father, what do you need? Father, what are you afraid of?" he would not know how to answer. He would not recognize the questions. They would sound like a language he once knew but has since forgotten, like the language of needing, like the language of being needed, not for what you give, but for what you are. The walls he calls oceans, the distance he calls divinity, the loneliness he has never named.
Here is the hard truth that the sea keeps. Poseidon is not alone because no one can reach him. He is alone because he built the water between himself and everything else, and he built it so high, so wide, so deep that even he cannot cross it anymore. He could release his grip. He could lower the walls. He could, in theory, allow himself to be approached. But the walls have been there so long that he cannot tell where the walls end and he begins. They have become his identity. The god who cannot be touched, the power that keeps distance, the force that is too vast, too volatile, too dangerous to come close to.
This is the trap of defensive isolation. The walls do not just protect you from the world, they hide you from yourself. They become a mirror that reflects only the version of you that is strong enough, distant enough, protected enough. And the self that lives behind those walls, the self that once knew how to need, how to grieve, how to reach for another being without the buffer of power, that self does not die. It simply goes quiet. It waits. It has been waiting for so long that it has forgotten what it was waiting for. The ocean has 1,000 islands, 1,000 shores, 1,000 places where water meets land and something can grow, and not one of them is home. Being needed is not the same as being loved. Having everyone around you is not the same as being known. And a palace with 1,000 rooms is still just a cage if the only prisoner is your heart.
The sun is setting over the Aegean. The light turns gold, then amber, then a deep and bloody red that bleeds into the horizon. Poseidon sits on a rock at the edge of the world, or what feels like the edge of the world, and watches the day die. This is the hour he likes best, not because it is beautiful, though it is, not because the light calms him, though it does. He likes it because the light is leaving. The sun is surrendering to the dark, and for a few hours, the world will not need him. The waves will still come, the tides will still turn, the ships will still need his blessing or his wrath, depending on their prayers, but for one small moment, this slipping, sliding moment between day and night, he is not the god. He is just an old man sitting on a rock watching something beautiful end. What would it mean to be shallow? Not stupid, not weak, just shallow. To be known in the way that shallow water is known, completely, entirely, without depths that no one can fathom. To be loved not for what you control, but for what you allow. To be held by someone who is not afraid of your waves because they know how to swim. He does not know. He has never known. The wanting rises in him like a tide, involuntary, inevitable, and then it recedes, and he is left with only the salt taste of longing and the sound of the waves and the growing dark.
You have built your own oceans. Perhaps not of water, perhaps not of salt and shipwreck and drowned sailors, but you have built them. The walls you keep between yourself and the people who want to reach you. The distance you maintain, even in the rooms where you are supposed to feel closest. The power you wield, not because you need it, but because you have forgotten how to exist without it. Maybe your ocean is work. Maybe it is perfectionism. Maybe it is the story you tell about yourself. The one where you are strong or right or too busy or too damaged or too something to need what you actually need. We all build oceans. It is not weakness. It is survival. At some point, in some chapter of your becoming, the walls kept you safe. They kept you from pain that seemed too big to survive. They kept you from reaching for something that might have been taken away. But here is what the tide teaches, if you watch long enough. The water always returns. The shore does not chase it. The shore does not beg. The shore simply waits and receives and lets go when it must. And the tide comes back, not because it was forced, but because it chose to. You can build your walls. You can call them strength. You can rule your ocean like a king. But somewhere, beneath the surface, in the deep places where even you do not go, there is a question waiting, and it does not ask, what can I destroy? What am I afraid to let in?
The stars are coming out now, one by one, like lanterns lit by hands unseen. The sea is black and silver, silver from the moon, black from the depth. Poseidon stands. The rock is cold where he was sitting. The shape of his body remains for a moment, an impression in the stone, and then even that is gone, smoothed by the wind. He does not turn back. He does not make a promise to change. He does not vow to be different tomorrow.
That is not what gods do. That is not what anyone does, not really. The vows we make in our moments of longing rarely survive the morning light. But something shifts, something small. The way the water shifts when something beneath it changes direction. The way the air shifts when a storm is building. The way everything shifts, just a little, when a god allows himself for one moment to wonder what it would feel like to be known. The tide pulls back from the shore. It always does. And in the space where the water used to be, something remains. Not treasure, not destruction, just wet sand, shiny and dark and full of possibility. Something could grow here if someone chose to plant something, if someone chose to stay. The sea does not apologize for its depth, but perhaps in the quietest hours, in the spaces between waves, it wonders what it would feel like to be shallow with someone who stayed. The moon rises, the tide returns, and Poseidon, lord of the sea, walks back into his ocean, still vast, still powerful, still surrounded by all that water, still wondering.